Morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual, and well, it's a long weekend. I was expecting a Friday night news dump, and really, I don't think there was any big bombshells or anything like that dropped last night. Oh well. Anyway, 680 News is reporting yesterday. Breaking: Minister of Education Stephen Lecce said the ministry has been directed not to renew their contract with We and to investigate expenditures to date. So that's interesting to note. It's good to know. I'm glad that they're instructing the boards of education as well not to renew contracts with We. Not great for We. Looks like their whole base is kind of collapsing, and they've already stopped having We days and all the other stuff. So on shaky ground, it seems, right? Here's Craig Kielburger, and he's saying in this clip that him and Justin Trudeau are friends and have been friends for a decade. And well, that's in contradiction to Justin Trudeau's testimony yesterday. And that's kind of what we're going to look at for the first couple of stories this morning. Here's Vivian Cruz, and she says, Craig, you said that Justin Trudeau was involved in We, deeply involved, even back when he was a teacher. How exactly was JT involved with We Movement? As a volunteer? Were his expenses paid? Full interview is at the YouTube clip in the link. And here's that 20-second clip. Here we go.
Mm-hmm. And so you've worked with a lot of world leaders. Who has been your favorite to work with?
Oh my goodness. Well, so I'm a little biased at the moment because he just joined us. Actually, I'll give you two who were with us yesterday. One is our Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau. In fact, before he was the Prime Minister, before he was a politician, he was a teacher. And so even back then he was involved in our work. So that's true dedication. He's hosted We Day, he's been deeply involved.
Mm-hmm.
Deeply involved. And here is Laurie Goldstein's column. He does a weekly column in The Sun, and this was reprinted by Canoe. And here it is. Goldstein: conflicted Trudeau doesn't know who his friends are. One reason Prime Minister Justin Trudeau keeps getting in trouble with federal conflict of interests legislation is that he does not know who his friends are. In his testimony to the House of Commons Finance Committee on Thursday regarding the We charity controversy, Trudeau said, I'm not friends with the Kielburgers. I know them, but I don't have close ties. Trudeau's argument was that since he is not friends with the We charity co-founders Craig and Mark Kielburger, his relationship with them did not influence his decision to award their charity a now canceled, sole-sourced $500 million contract. I thought it was $912 million. It included up to $43 million to administer the program, paying student volunteers $10 per hour, which is below the minimum wage. And remember how it was $19 billion and now it's ballooned to $43.5 million? Or sorry, $19 million and then ballooned to $43.5 million. It's interesting how the reporting changes, right? But I'm interested as why this number was used. I understand that they released it and this was the size of the contract, but the public contract was $912 million until this article. So that's notable. Okay, back to the article. The problem with Trudeau's claim is that he has publicly declared his friendship with the Kielburgers in the past, and Craig Kielburger has publicly described Trudeau as a friend. On November 10th, 2015, making his first public appearance as PM 6 days after being sworn in, Trudeau, accompanied by his wife and making his fourth appearance at a We Day event organized by the Kielburgers, told the young audience, quote, the big challenge that we're facing and that our friends, Craig and Mark, have done such an incredible job with over the past years is showing you that each and every one of us is powerful, Toronto Star, November 10th. On the same day, Craig Kielburger, praising Trudeau for what he said was his commitment to youth issues, described Trudeau as his friend. Quote, I think it speaks to his heart, and that's why I'm inspired and hopeful to see what will emerge, said Kielburger, who has known Trudeau for more than a decade and considers him a friend. I can't think of another G7 leader who would say one of the top issues worthy of their attention is the future of young people. I mean, like, if you're governing a country, isn't that implicitly what you're doing? The future of young people is in your hands, because if you govern poorly, then their future is at risk. What? What kind of gobbledygook is he talking about? No world leaders are interested in youth these days. Weird. What a strange take on things. Like, and to articulate it that way, right? Like, I really think you get into office because, well, I think that you probably get into politics because you want good governance and good policy and policy that will enrich the population. But that means fundamentally taking care of the youth, right? Like, micromanaging the youth, I don't think is a good sign, right? I remember what happened when Hitler had the Nazi youth, right? Like, this is not a good idea to indoctrinate your youth into politics. They should be given the tools to think critically, and that will much better enable them to deal with the world than ideological gobbledygook that they repeat as if by rote, right? Like that's not going to help them, right? That's not going to help them think through if a rental contract is good or not. That's not going to help them think through or reason out the best course of action in an emergency or the best job to take for the next couple of years, right? Like you've got to arm kids with the material and the ability to deal with the world that's going to confront them, and ideological gobbledygook doesn't do it. Anyway, back to this. Now let's get back to Trudeau's first conflict of interest in 2017, when the ethics commissioner, Mary Dawson, found he broke the Conflict of Interest Act because he was not, as he claimed, a close friend of the Aga Khan. So this is the inverse, right? Like Trudeau's argument was that the conflict law allowed him to receive gifts from friends, such as the free vacations his family took on the Aga Khan's private island in the Bahamas, while his government was considering a $15 million grant to one of the Aga Khan's charitable foundations. Dawson concluded, contrary to Trudeau's claim, that the Aga Khan was actually the friend of Trudeau's father, Pierre Trudeau. By contrast, Justin Trudeau and the Aga Khan had spoken only once in 30 years before he became Liberal Party leader. In the wake of Dawson's ruling that Trudeau had violated 4 sections of the Conflict of Interest Act, Trudeau continued to insist he was a close friend of the Aga Khan, despite Dawson's findings. Quote, "She made a determination that he is not a family friend. I still consider him a family friend," Trudeau told reporters following the release of Dawson's report. Media Scrum 2017, December 2017. Trudeau said he was sorry and that he would proactively consult with the ethics commissioner on such issues in the future. Maybe Trudeau should have consulted with current ethics commissioner Mario Dion on who his friends are before he voted in cabinet to award a huge sole-source government contract to the We organization founded and headed by the Kielburgers. And hold on, his wife Sophie Trudeau does a podcast with with one of the wives of the Kielburgers. I think it's Craig's wife. Hold on. Yeah, here's the podcast. Okay, so here's the We Wellbeing podcast, and here's Sophie Trudeau. That's Justin Trudeau's wife. As far as I know, they're still together. I haven't heard anything more than divorce rumors. I've heard divorce rumors, but I haven't heard anything more than that. And here's Lisa Kurzweil Kielburger. These are the hosts of the podcast at We. Right? And links in the description. There's We. So isn't that interesting? We're not friends. I mean, my wife and his wife do a podcast together, but we're not friends. Do we have to be friends with our wives' podcast hosts? Right? Wow. So hold on. Let me get back to the tab that I was supposed to be on. So from the Aga Khan to friendships with We, friendship seems to be a big issue with Trudeau. So does, accurately recalling the truth, mischaracterizing things that happened, issues with that. Here's Justin Trudeau being questioned about the Globe and Mail story about SNC-Lavalin and pressuring then Attorney General Jody Wilson-Raybould. We all know that the ethics commissioner found that the former Attorney General was improperly pressured by the office of the PMO and by the office of the finance minister. Just to put this in context, but here's Trudeau being questioned about it as the story broke in February 2017.
Did you or anyone in your office pressure the former Attorney General to abandon the prosecution of SNC-Lavalin?
The allegations in the Globe story this morning are false. Neither the current nor the previous Attorney General was ever directed by me or by anyone in my office to take a decision in this matter.
Right, but we know that that's not true. And here's one newspaper article about it. There are many. This one says explicitly, Trudeau violated ethics laws by pressing Wilson-Raybould on over SNC-Lavalin deal ethics commissioner rules, and this is August 14th, 2019. So that's how long this stuff takes, right? It was February when the story broke, and August before anything meaningful really came back that could be reported, right? But he totally mischaracterized, didn't tell the truth about he lied about what happened to the reporters here. And so lots of ethics violations. But here's Trudeau laying the blame at Minister Morneau's feet. This is CTV News, published July 31st. Today's August 1st. It says Morneau should not have accepted gifts from We Charity. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says Finance Minister Bill Morneau should not have accepted gifted portions of his family's trips with We Charity. Trudeau, speaking at a press conference in Ottawa on Friday, was referring to the fact that We Charity paid in part for 2 trips that members of Morneau's family took in 2017, one of which Morneau himself took part in. Morneau has apologized for the error and said it was his full intention to cover the full cost of the trips, though he only last week repaid $41,000 that the charity had initially covered related to the trips to Kenya and Ecuador. As Mr. Morneau himself highlighted, he apologized and he should not have accepted the elements of that were gifts, Trudeau said Friday. Trudeau said in the press conference that obviously there are questions for Morneau, though the Prime Minister quickly followed that statement up by asserting that the Finance Minister had already addressed them. Trudeau also defended Morneau's intentions in going on the trip. The idea that someone on their personal vacation would choose to support a good cause or get involved in helping make the world a better place is not something we should reject or turn away from, Trudeau said. Despite Trudeau's assertions, Morneau's decision to take the trip is part of what landed both the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister in hot water over the decision to grant a now cancelled contract to deliver $543 million of an up to $912 million grant. Even just $500 million was low. Okay, the ethics commissioner is now investigating both men for their decision not to recuse themselves from talks about the contract, given their family ties to We Charity, including the 2 trips to that Morneau's family took part in. It's the same issue as the Aga Khan, right? You can't take gifts in exchange for preferential treatment in the House of Commons, or in legislating, or in sole source contracting, or anything like that. Okay, back to this. Trudeau's mother, brother, and wife have all been paid for their involvement in We Charity events, while the Finance Minister's daughter, Claire, has spoken at We events, and his daughter, Grace, is currently employed by We Charity. Both men have apologized for not recusing themselves from the discussion. Trudeau has insisted that he was not in a position of conflict during the conversations about the grant, but rather a perception of conflict. The concerns about the personal connections my family had were all around perception, Trudeau said on Friday. He went on to say that delivering a grant program to students who volunteer across the country has absolutely nothing to do with any work my brother or mother did with We, and that's why there was no conflict of interest. The Prime Minister said he expressed concerns about the We Charity. Okay, hold on. I put the red here to stop myself. So that's Trudeau's argument. I said that yesterday. I said maybe he's got a point, blah, 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 blah. I expected a bunch more dislikes, actually. There's 5 dislikes, and people made a big deal about that, so I thought that was kind of funny. Because here's the thing. Part of getting away from a scandal like this is time and making it more complicated. The more complicated it is, the harder it is to explain. The harder it is to explain, the easier it is to believe it's a conspiracy theory dreamt up by the alt-right and white supremacists. That is what people are instructed to do. Dismiss it. It's too complicated. Dismiss it. Didn't happen. Nope, didn't happen. Sorry. Trudeau meant well. Sorry. That's it. So here is somebody smarter than me saying, this is actually a conflict. It's really a conflict. Definitely a conflict. Here we go.
Of this is not just the personal conflict, and let's just be clear, it's not a perceived conflict, it's a actual conflict. Is one part of it, but the second part is this is a liberal friendly organization. This would be like saying, I don't know, the Fraser Institute or something. Doesn't have any ideological tint. This is a liberal organization that has been using money to run election-style ads that basically look like personal prime minister campaign ads with money, and they're not really so much a private organization. They're getting a lot of public money funneling through this. So I think it's self-dealing in a much more concerning political way. I actually find that portion of it far more concerning than the personal benefit in the Trudeau family, because and if you want to have the worst view of it, it's funneling taxpayer money through government programs to organizations that are going to carry water for you ideologically and in a very real campaign sense. So I think it's too cute by half, and I think that it's a lot more than a perception. So.
Too cute by half. I like that. Too cute by half. Far too cute, Prime Minister, but not that hair. And so, when I was saying make it complicated, Trudeau's trying to make it about the family connection. He's trying to say it's not a conflict of interest because they weren't directly my family, see? So perception of conflict, blah, 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 blah. Family, 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 perception of conflict, perception of conflict. He believes it. He can sell it. And the real conflict is the electioneering and the funneling of money to the friendly industry. Imagine Harper was funneling money, and his finance minister were funneling money to the Fraser Institute to run school indoctrination programs. That's the scandal. That's the problem, right? The family stuff is secondary. Everybody's focusing on it, and it's going to make it too complicated to easily talk about, because people are going to be like, oh, well, it was a perception of conflict. It wasn't really conflict, right? And that's that. And you can't win the argument because they're not going to engage in the argument. They've got their marching orders and they'll take them. And it's so insidious because it works every time. It works every time, you racist, right? Here's Telford. I did some watching of it. I didn't watch all of it. I've got the link here for you guys to watch if you want to watch all of it. 2 hours and 18 minutes. It's interesting. Here is, Jesse Brown, this is Canada Land reporter. He says, yesterday Telford was asked who made it iwannahelp.org. The government, or we, the site was announced by government on April 22nd to implement the volunteer grants before we is said to have gotten the job. I don't know the answer to that, Telford replied. I do, says Jesse. We made it. And he's got the inspection. So the inspection tool is a web tool you can use to look at the source code of a website. Okay, so he's got the I Want to Help, and you can see it's I Want to Help down here in the picture because it says iwannahelp.org. And you can see over here it's got a lot of, this is called commenting something out. So this is commented out code talking about, well, actually this is an array. This is a list. This is a probably a drop-down menu or something to that effect. So with maybe links, I'm not sure. But there's, so I wanted to have a look at this. I like to find the live stuff on the internet. It looks like they got rid of that. But there's still lots of we stuff in here, the static .we.org. Why are they sending statistics to we if it's a government website that we has no involvement in? And then there's WeBook. So I'm not sure. I can't emphatically, like, I can't prove what Jesse's alleging here. It doesn't have the same display for me. Now, I could be looking in the wrong place. I thought I was looking in the right place. But still, it's very interesting, the timeline. And the timeline is what Mr. Poilievre is concerned about in this clip. This is a long clip. And the clip is a little end game on chess. And Poilievre gets a lot of early wins. In the beginning of this clip, he's like the cat that caught the canary, right? He's got a big grin on his face because he got her to admit something that messes up with the timeline. And so the timeline doesn't fit up, and so the complications ensue. But Poilievre questions Telford, and you should watch the whole clip. I'm just going to show a part of it. But I don't think this is over, but I think this is going to get more complicated. Okay, here we go.
Okay, that's interesting because they claim that ESDC is, we're told, is the one that then told them they could start working on May 5th. Very strange, because the Prime Minister claimed that the decision was not made in Cabinet until May the 22nd. So if the PMO was not directing the work to begin, then who told we that they could start working on a project that didn't exist, would not go on to exist for at least another 12 or 13 days?
Ms. Telford, you have about half a minute.
So as one of your colleagues already asked me about this, and I will repeat my answer, which is that the program only launched at the end of June, and in terms of the details of how the program was constructed in the...
Mr. Poilievre, give the witness time without interruption, and we give her equal time. Go ahead, Ms. Telford.
The program was announced at the end of June, and in terms of the details around the contribution agreement, I would refer you back to, and I know you've already spoken to them, officials from the department who were involved in that.
Right. So your office spoke.
So now he's going back to put the timeline together to basically say at the end, that can't be possible because X. They backdated it. They backdated the contract to the 5th, right? We was given the green light sometime around the 5th, and that's what Poilievre is trying to get to the bottom of. Who said go? Because Telford is the Prime Minister's chief of staff. If she doesn't know, who's giving the marching orders, right? And she's saying that she doesn't know. How does $1 billion deal get to cabinet, to the COVID cabinet, to the cabinetary committee, without going through the Prime Minister's office, without the Prime Minister's chief of staff knowing? Who's calling the shots? Basically, is the question here, right? And it's a good question, but it's a 5-minute chess game to get the pieces in play, and it's not like she answers the questions necessarily, but Polly ever gets enough to push, right? So it's very interesting. It's very interesting. Here's the whole thing. Maybe I should have queued that up on here. I apologize that I didn't. Here's I'm going to play this again because I think that it's very interesting. Well, maybe not. Yesterday I played this clip. This is Dr. Yaf. I think that's how you say it. Yaf. And she is talking about how in populations with low COVID, 50% of the tests are false positives. What part of low population of COVID and the 50% of the tests are, why does low population matter? If 50% of tests are false positives in populations with low COVID, why are the false positives less in different populations? And I'm genuinely asking, is that possible? Why is it possible? What is the mechanism? I like to learn. I do read through my comments. So why? Why does the population size matter? Is it just over a matter of tests, the average false positives drop? Like if there are more tests? I don't know. I don't understand the reasoning behind it. So I'm not sure why the number of tests matters towards the false positives percentage. And if we have 50% false positives, why are we making policy on that? Here is restaurants in Ottawa. Restaurants in Ottawa must now take down contact information for patrons for potential contact case tracing. We didn't do case tracing up until now. This is what, we're 5 months into a pandemic, 6 months into a pandemic. We've done lockdowns. We've done no mandatory masks up till 4 months. Now mandatory masks and mandatory contact tracing and more draconian laws. This is the projections. The projections didn't bear out. They projected 11,000 to 22,000. 9,000 people died. They said nearly 4 months later, the deaths of about 9,000 people, have been linked to the virus in Canada, but the pandemic is far from over, according to the World Health Organization. But here's the Toronto Public Health blue check mark. Okay, I'm just showing you this blue check mark. Sorry, blue check mark, right? It says individuals who have died with COVID-19, but not as a result of COVID-19, are included in the case counts for COVID-19 deaths in Toronto. So how are these legitimate numbers? How are any of our numbers legitimate? How are we making these draconian policies like restaurant contact tracing now, months after they'll do any good anyway, to what end? Like what is the purpose of this? I can't believe that it's to keep people safe. I can't believe that it's the necessary thing to do, especially now in Guelph. We have 10 cases total, 1 case in the hospital. Does that constitute an emergency? Does that constitute mandatory masks? I'm interested to see if this is going to be another regional thing that pops up and everybody does this. Apparently restaurants now are taking names of one person in the party if they come and sit in the restaurant. But it's certainly a concerning slide into reduction of movement of freedom, which is a basic human right. And I don't believe that they have the numbers to continue to justify it. And I don't understand why there's not more pushback. There should be. It's very concerning. So, I don't know. I just don't think that the numbers justify it. So here we are. Ottawa is pushing this. I don't think it's province-wide, but the article is clear about the expectation of everybody who eats in to give their name and contact information to be traced. So I think that would be devastating for restaurants. I think it would be worse than having to eat outside and all of the measures that are currently in place. Eating outside is nice sometimes, but when it's windy, sometimes you want to sit inside in the air conditioning. I'm just saying. Okay, that's enough out of me. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. And have a wonderful, wonderful